Rahul.
Yeah, that was absolutely wonderful, and I want to echo, it's such a privilege and an honor to learn from the two of you, so thank you for that. And as we want to do a little bit of like self-care and just different activities, thank you for the breathing activity. I'm going to invite us, as you're able, to scoot your chair out a little bit. So we're going to do a little activity of rumbling on our thighs. And I'm going to play conductor, and I'm going to do a little volume control in a second. If you could look up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the volume real low, and we're going to see what happens when we try raise our volume and bring it back down together as one community. So we'll start low. Let's do it again. Follow me, watch me. All right, this time, once again, I want you to shut your eyes, put your palms up, shut your eyes, take a deep breath, and open your eyes again. Let's do it one more time. One last time, palms up, shut your eyes if you're comfortable. Just notice what's going on inside of you. Give yourself permission to breathe deeply and slowly. And as you're able, I want you to put the palms of your hands on your eyelids. And just notice. Notice what that feels like. Check in with yourself, given where you are in the day, post-lunch, what we've been talking about. How are you doing? What are you sitting with? And as you continue to breathe deeply and slowly, I want you to express gratitude towards your breath, or what we call in Sanskrit prana, which is the life force, or from Chinese medicine, the concept of qi. Express gratitude towards the life force, always sustaining you through breath and through nourishment. And see if there's any place in your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual self that needs that prana, needs that qi. And allow yourself to direct your energy in that way. And when you're ready to come back, if you haven't done so already, take your time and open your eyes. So I also want to express my gratitude towards the organizers, again, the panelists, and gratitude for being in community with all of you. And even though one of my points of this is we got to stop the death by PowerPoint trainings, I have a PowerPoint. So I wanted to say that this is great timing. I've been thinking about self-care for DEI practitioners for some time. A colleague of mine, Corey Wallace, and I have been thinking about doing a retreat for DEI practitioners. And just recently we sent out a survey, and there's actually I'm going to send you I'll give you a QR code at the end of this presentation if any of you want to take this survey. And it's addressing burnout and compassion fatigue and what you might want or need from something like a retreat or other needs. We're just again, informally taking this data before we plan what we're going to do next. I've gotten some great responses from that survey, so I'll be peppering in a couple of narrative responses to my remarks. I want to talk a little bit about the backlash, but more about the overarching need of DEI practitioners to not only survive, but thrive in our work. And if there's a general theme to what I'm saying, I think it's making to me, a subtle but profound shift. And I think the umbrella concept is healing, a shift towards healing. So to echo what folks were saying already, I think self-care is not selfish. It's important for us to recognize self-care is not selfish. Self-care is healthcare. It's important for us to recognize that our ability to affect change, the manner in which we affect change, and how sustainably we can affect change will be determined by our attention to our own wellness, our own burnout prevention, and in some cases, because it is like an aftercare and not self-care, sometimes as burnout or compassion fatigue mitigation. Want to share a handful of insights through my own journey. So a bit about my company, Strategic Inclusion Consulting, really looking at DEI needing to be connected to leadership development, emotional intelligence, wellness, self-care. All of these things need to happen in concert. We can't just think about DEI concepts in of themselves. We need to think about how leaders back us up, and all of these other things are really important. Other concepts, and again, the larger umbrella is healing. I'll be touching on decolonizing our practice, taking an embodied approach, and leveraging arts modalities, and I'll get to that in a moment. But this pivot towards healing, for those who are familiar with Sean Ginwright's work, here's a quote: "Our real power comes from the courage to deal with our fractured relationships, the vulnerability to acknowledge our hurt feelings, and the awareness to know when our ego shows up." And he goes on to say, I didn't put that on the slide because it would be too long. Social change is deeply connected to our own healing, reflection, and well-being. And that really spoke to me. And that, again, I think that this is where I found myself at this point in my journey, is our own healing and what we're doing as DEI practitioners in the work that we do and the way we do our work. How do we pivot towards healing? As the panelists have already said, DEI officers can shoulder so much. Sometimes it's mutual alienation. You might be even alienated as a person with a diverse background. You might be somewhat alienated from leadership if they don't fully get you or don't fully support you. But you might also be alienated from the ERGs with whom you share identities, but they're kind of looking at you sideways, not exactly sure whose side are you on. So it can be a real precarious position to be in. And you're often a lightning rod or a scapegoat for whenever anything goes south. So what are some things that we can do? A couple of things that come to mind in terms of self-care strategies. Self-advocacy. As practitioners, can you advocate for professional development funds and resources? This can come in the way of training, this can come in the way of conferences, but also, how often do we think about coaching and mentorship opportunities and advocating for yourself in terms of that? As a coach and someone who believes in tying in emotional intelligence, I'm glad to be someone who does assessments and a certified coach for the Emotional Intelligence Inventory, where you do the EQI and the EQ 360. And I have found it so rewarding to be able to sit down with folks and anchor our sessions around how does emotional intelligence fit into your goals right now in your job and how you want to succeed. And just to bring in a couple of quotes from the survey that we just sent out. People talk about feeling isolated and alone and lacking in colleagues that they can turn to in order to talk through the challenges that they're facing in their role. Or someone else said the feelings of being watched closer and the dangers it comes with adds a layer of emotional exhaustion that other jobs don't have. So again, what kind of resources can we advocate for ourselves as DEI practitioners? But there's also something for leaders, recognizing what people have spoken to in terms of the toll that this stuff takes. And integrating wellness and self-care into staff programming, I think, is really important. Leading with shared, this is more important, I think, for leaders, to not leave your DEI officers high and dry, to have shared accountability and ownership. And we heard that theme earlier today a little bit. And again, more excerpts from the survey. My burnout is really attributed to the performative DEI actions of the administrators, all talk and no walk. Work isn't supported. Someone else said lack of leadership accountability. Another comment, low self-care awareness and multi-level trauma that influenced what work I took on and capacity and misalignment. So that was some of the problematic stuff. Someone wrote a positive comment, which I think is inspirational. I'm lucky to have an incredible manager and make a global impact with my work. We have support from the top on our initiatives, and I love what I get to do every day. So leaders can have a big impact on the success of DEI practitioners. I think leaders can also undergo their own coaching in anti-racism, their own coaching in various other forms. Also, bring in consultants to do conflict management when needed. Tomorrow, I'm flying to San Diego to work with a faculty body on the West Coast, in San Diego. And I just hope the weather's as good as it is today. But there's so much, and a lot of it has to do with a lot of these issues and how people are conflicting with each other. There's competing strategies to deal with these very complicated issues. But like, are you bringing in restorative justice or conflict management folks when this is needed and not putting stuff just on the shoulders of the in-house practitioners? So, where else are we? Oh yeah. So when I was in, I'm looking at the time. Woo! All right, here we go. When I was in DC, I did a workshop with some colleagues, and one of the things that one of my colleagues used was the ecology of self-care. Very simple but profound exercise. So if you look here, imagine you have a blank sheet of paper and you put a big circle in the center, and that's you. And all around you, you put aspects of your life. It could be your job, it could be specific people at your job, it could be, in my case, basketball that I need to play, twice a week, or it could be family, it could be so many things, roles, activities, and all of this. And then you have a key over here. You draw two-way lines. In which way is this a positive relationship? And do I put an arrow saying I'm giving more energy to this than I'm getting back from this? Or is this a stressful relationship and I mark that with a jagged line? This is a weaker or tenuous relationship. And when I've done this individually and collectively since COVID, I've sometimes asked people to do two different versions. What was this like before COVID? And what strategies have been, do we actually have to mourn some of our initial strategies that we've lost because of COVID? Have we developed new ones that weren't there before COVID? What I found when my colleagues shared this, and we did this it was self-care for the social justice activist was the workshop. It was so straightforward, but it was profound for people to give themselves space to just take stock of where is my life now, what can I do differently? And this might lead to decisions like, I need to do more of this, I might need to do more of that. Or as one person wrote in the comments, I had to leave DEI work altogether. And maybe that's one of the realizations that's going to be the best form of self-care. So where am I giving more than I'm getting? Impact of COVID, and what can I modify are important questions. I wanted to share, this is my musical family that we just celebrated 26 years together this last December. And it says, photo credit Michelle Buck, who is in the room right now, who was hanging out with us. This was at a wedding in Pittsburgh, and we were like, another gorgeous day, let's take this picture. But this has been my inspiration for so much. In terms of achieving inclusion and belonging, this is my North Star, and I feel really lucky to be able to have this be a part of what I do. And it started as a sort of a respite or escape from when I was in grad school or when I was dealing with tough stuff in my various forms of work, to actually coming full circle. And now I get to utilize aspects of what's happening in the band and working with different band members in the work that I do. And I wanted to highlight a couple of components of that, because we come from different cultural traditions. We all have in common honoring our ancestral roots. and being able to bring that in some of the work that we do. This was Chicago Children's Museum Board of Directors training, where myself and our 4 rhythm ambassadors, we have a West African drummer, an Indian drummer, a Latin drummer, a Brazilian drummer, going into 4 different rooms and teaching people these different cultural rhythms, then coming into the big room, which is what we're doing here, and putting the rhythms together. And then, because I'm a psychologist, let's turn to the next person and unpack this and talk about how it's related to our work. And the theme here was on inclusive joy. So decolonizing our work, in what ways can we tap into various artistic traditions, ancestral wisdoms from our cultures of origin, and bring that to not only our own healing, but the work that we're doing? For me, that's been very inspiring and empowering. And just another photo from the Racial Justice in Praxis conference a few years ago, where, again, using these different modalities, even in this point, it was a paired sharing where we're talking and listening with each other, but we're bringing in, again, multicultural drumming in our work. And I'm gonna speed through this. So how are we, and what I like about this is between the breathing, between the drumming, and some other people do movement practices, embodied healing is so important, recognizing that this affects us holistically, not just at a mental or emotional level. And speaking of decolonizing and representing my cultural heritage, I have to share my chai recipe. How many people have had chai? Okay, I'm not counting the Starbucks culturally co-opted chai. I'm talking the real, I set you up, didn't I? All right, okay, good. So there's chai right there, and there are all the different ingredients. And by the way, I do know how to make a mean cup of chai. But right now, I'm talking about an acronym, which is just, oh, I know. Oh, man. Ooh. Yeah, you saw it coming. You've heard me before.
Now, can you make that though?
I can. In fact, I blend all of those. All right. Nutmeg, cloves, ginger powder, cinnamon, black pepper, and green elaichi, which is cardamom. And then you put that, you blend that all together, and you put it in with black tea, and you got chai. All right. But if you'll bear with me, it's also an acronym. But I'm going to speak shorthand because I want to leave time for Q&A. Compassion, we know, and some of our morning speakers were talking about compassion and grace, empathy and grace, which I think is important. Humility is important for us in this work. Accountability to impact is really important. And for me, the counterbalance to those 3 first elements is insistence, fighting the good fight, getting into good trouble, saying what needs to be said, and fundamentally insisting that we all belong. And I'll leave you with this last picture, which is, at the time we couldn't say what conference this was because it had to be a secret who the client was. But since this happened a couple of years ago, I'm gonna hedge my bet and just say it was for a search engine that rhymes with schmoogle. But this was a huge conference. It was a huge conference that got to bring the band together with some of my favorite artists in the Chicago area to create a 20-drummer intercultural experience at the Field Museum for this conference. But my point is expanding our circles, because that was the other comment that came through in these in the survey, is how do we stay connected with each other? And we need to do it for support, to stay organized, and to show up for each other. And that's my time. If anybody wants to do the DEI practitioner needs assessment, there's the QR code, and hopefully I didn't go too far.
No, it's fine. It's
All
fantastic.
Right.
Thank you guys so much.